Hello, everybody. Douglas V. Gibbs here, Mr. Constitution, and it's great to be with you here. Welcome to the video page. Welcome to this particular video, and I'd like to talk a little bit about an event I had today when I recorded this. I went to a group that is not necessarily a Republican group or a Tea Party group or a Constitution group. It's one of those groups I talk to every once in a while, and they are not necessarily partisan. In fact, they tell you they don't want you to really talk about politics. Their group is about being having relatives that were once a part of the American Revolution. I won't get into exactly who it is, but I'm sure you can figure it out. And this particular branch, the individual who invited me is a student of one of my Constitution classes in Fallbrook, California. And she also, interestingly enough, attends the same church I attend, and invited me, and she's, I think, vice president of the of this particular club. So she invited me to come and speak, and I decided, well, I know this group is, what it is. They have a mixed crowd often, so I'm gonna and because I talk about God and natural rights and ideology quite a bit in my speeches because it is important, but tone it down. I'll use more general terms. I won't say names of political parties. I'll say if there's certain groups that believe certain things, and I won't say Christianity. I'll say God and religious freedom and things like that. So not that I'm censoring myself or using political correctness. But at the same time, I'm a guest in this particular meeting, and so I'm willing to play kind of by a couple of their rules anyway, but yet at the same time get the same message out. So I get to the podium and I begin my speech and I say, rather than get into the what I usually talk about, let's do a little history. Let's, since they're about the American Revolution, I'm going to get the American Revolution into it. I'm going to talk about how, these founding fathers were willing to put on the lines their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for us. It says in the preamble, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And I noticed in their little pamphlet booklet, because they recite the preamble at the beginning of their meeting, and I noticed that the United States of America has capitalization in that, but the other words that are capitalized in the preamble are not capitalized in their booklet. So I bring this to their attention. And when I bring this to their attention, what I explain is, it says secure the blessings of liberty. Blessings being capitalized. That's because blessings is God-given, given by the Creator. Liberty are your rights. You have natural rights, God-given rights. They come from God. They are God's gift to you. Government has no say. The government's not there to protect them, not there to guarantee them, not there to define your rights. That's between you and God. But it says, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Ourselves is lowercase, posterity is capitalized, capital P. In other words, they put on the line their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. Yes, for themselves, lowercase ourselves, but especially for you. Capitalized posterity, they capitalized words for emphasis. And then I got into the story about the Pilgrims in Jamestown, how Jamestown, when they first got there, first thing they did was they pulled an old tarp from the ship. They covered an area through some tree branches, they set up some benches, and they held service. Christianity was the foundation of their colony. And when it came to the Pilgrims, they were there for religious liberty. They were escaping religious persecution, and they came there, and the first thing that they did after both, and Jamestown did this too, and they both did, they tried socialism. It failed. People got hungry. They changed to a free market system, and they thanked God for it. Thanksgiving. And the first thing that they did in their Mayflower Compact is they put it in the hands of God. So God is the foundation of our system. From the very beginning with the colonies, when it comes to the Constitution, when it comes to the Declaration, God is throughout all of that stuff. So the idea that there's a creator and that the creator is the keystone of our system, and if you know anything about an arch, you take out the keystone, the arch collapses. God is that keystone. So that's what I'm basically, speaking on, and I'm not using the word Christianity or Christian. I'm not proselytizing. I'm just talking about history and the Constitution and the influences of God on that document and why it was important to the founders and so on and so forth. And I even go so far to make sure they don't get all, out of whack over, he's talking politically. And I pull out my Constitution and I say, this document is not a Republican document. It's not a Democrat document. It's not a right-wing, left-wing, progressive, conservative. It's an American document. And on the scale, it's dead center. And as Americans, it's for all of us. All of us are here to benefit from it. All of us are to, fight for it, maintain it. But it needs to be maintained. It needs to be fought because we have certain groups in today's society that disagree with it, find it an obstacle. They don't want the liberty offered by this document. And so then after the speech, I get the Q&A session, and the first woman asked me about something going on in South Carolina or North Carolina. She's not even sure which Carolina. Something about them trying to go against the Constitution and declare it not their document or something like that. And I'm like, I haven't heard anything like that. The only thing I can tell you is, Moore v. Harper, I know that there's a lawsuit, the Supreme Court, that they're hearing right now to determine whether or not the state legislature has sole authority over elections or if the courts can strike down that. Their decisions when it comes to elections and drawing the district lines for districts and all that jazz. And then next question, a woman says, okay, I just want clarification. So you did say then that we are a Christian nation. I said, no, ma'am, I did not say that. I said that Christianity is the foundation of this country. The moment those words came out of my mouth, I hadn't noticed, but right before I had gotten to that point, a woman had gotten up and walked out of the room, and I was given a note later saying that the reason she left is because my speech had too many religious undertones. And then another woman gets up. About the time I said, well, no, ma'am, this is not a Christian nation. In other words, not a theocracy, but Christianity is our foundation. She asked something about how many Jews were in the country, 1,500. I said, actually, 5,000 at the time of independence. It's their God, too. But nonetheless, this woman jumps up and says, that's it. This has got to stop now. This is in violation of our bylaws. Can't get political, can't get religious. I'm not being religious. I'm telling a story. I'm telling you what the story of the Pilgrims in Jamestown and our founders were. And they held God in high esteem. They believed that God was the reason why we had gotten where we're getting. But I was shut down because I dared to mention God. Now, I didn't know if I wanted to pull a Ben Shapiro or a Dennis Prager and launch into a debate with this woman, or if I needed to respect the fact that I'm in their house, their conference center, room, whatever, with their members, under their rules. So I decided, all right, fine. But if anybody wants to talk to me afterwards, I'm going to stay, because they had another half hour, 45 minutes of club business to deal with. And I told them, I said, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to be here afterwards. Talk to me in the parking lot, talk to me at my table where my books are. And I'm not even selling my books. Give me a gift of, a certain amount, and I'll let you have a book, and I'll autograph for you. That way it's wasn't sold, because they have this thing about things being sold at their events also. And, a few people then afterwards came to me and said, well, this person's always tough and blah, 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 blah. And I get it. And there's always one or two of those people in every group. And, I was told, well, most of the people in this room agree with you. What's there to agree with? I wasn't being political. I wasn't being religious. I'm just telling you, we have a constitution that is based on an idea of securing liberty, securing our rights, and doing so with a republic, not a democracy. I even went into that in my speech a little bit. Talked about what the difference between a democracy and a republic was. So when we say the pledge, just do the republic for which it stands, not the democracy. Because there was a balance that was trying to meet. Don't want too much democracy, don't want too little democracy. Got to have some, but you got to be careful. There's a certain amount. And I even got into my thing I talk about with my dad's salsa recipe. The salsa recipe, if you don't follow the recipe with the exact right ingredients, it's not going to taste right. Our recipe, our Constitution, is not being followed. And that's why things are going haywire on us. And we have people actually believe it's an obstacle to what they want. And I made comment that Jefferson and Madison and Franklin are like my favorite founders. And, I what I talk about is their view, basically, of this system and this Constitution. But the fact that I'm sitting there going, arguing or being argued with, I didn't argue back really for the most part, that, well, you're getting too Christian. We're not talking about God enough. And you want me to talk about him less? We've removed God from the public square. That's our problem. Whether you're a Christian or not, we need to have that value system, that moral standard, that godly, virtuous people. Benjamin Franklin, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. John Adams, our Constitution was made only for a moral, religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. George Washington, in his farewell address, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. That's what they believed. Meanwhile, in today's society, this happened last May this year. A San Diego Elevate Elementary School Board member and parent board trustee says, I would rather get an abortion than have a brown child who ends up being adopted by white evangelicals. An abortion is an act of love. That's a little bit of hostility. You're willing to kill an individual, a human being in the womb, because you don't want to be raised by white evangelicals. Really? Next news item, IRS, and this goes back to March 11, 2022. Dr. Robert Jeffress, the pastor of First Baptist Dallas, told the Todd Starnes show the Biden administration is using its agencies, including the Internal Revenue Service, to target Christians. When host Todd Starnes asked the Encouragement from a Place Called Heaven author about Christian persecution, he said it is coming to America through the government. In many ways, it's already here, Jeffress said. The government is going to get an inroad into the church through regulations and through the Internal Revenue Service. All right, next article, next story. To get through this, to show you what's going on here. Montana missionaries arrested and thrown in jail. An account containing intricate details concerning 5 missionaries who were walking across America, whose walking route then brought them to Montana after about 5,500 miles to share the gospel of Jesus Christ peacefully, gently, and with respect as they walked many miles on November 12th, 2022. This is just a month ago. These same missionaries, Jesse Boyd, his 18-year-old daughter, Bethany Boyd, 12-year-old son, Josiah Boyd, and mission partners, Eric Trent and Carter Phillips, were assaulted, arrested, thrown in jail, and the kids were taken by CPS, Child Protective Services. Jesse Boyd, quote, "We have been privileged to serve Christ in more than 40 countries in some of the most remote and farthest corners of the world. We aren't novices. We aren't naive little missionaries. We aren't inexperienced without discernment, and we certainly aren't homeless vagabonds like the prosecutor suggested to the judge in the Zoom court." Next article, next headline, faith leaders warn so-called Respect for Marriage Act will hack away at religious freedom. In fact, on Saturday night at 9 p.m. on my KPRZ show, radio program, you can listen to that show at kprz.com Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, or you can catch it later on pretty much all of the podcast networks. If you look up Mr. Constitution Hour by Douglas V. Gibbs on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Odyssey, Amazon, Listen Notes, Apple, the list goes on and on and on of all of the ones I'm on. Heck, you can even say to your, the lady phone thing and the internet thing where you say, hey, whatchamacallit, whatever her name is, do this for me. You can even ask for Mr. Constitution Hour and it'll show up there. But I don't have one, so I can't remember the name of it. But I talk about this Respect for Marriage Act. Is it constitutional? Matter of fact, I just did a video on it too. The video prior to this one. Feel free to check it out. But anyway, so in this article, this is at the Daily Signal. Mary Margaret Olahan wrote this. Leaders of faith-based institutions warned the Daily Signal on Tuesday that the Democrat-led Respect for Marriage Act, which is expected to be voted on by Senate Wednesday, it's already been, at the point of this video, it's already been approved by both houses of Congress and signed by the president, would hack away at the religious freedoms of faith-based groups. H.R. 8404 provides statutory authority for same-sex and interracial marriages, repealing provisions that define marriages between a man and a woman. The legislation, which was passed by the House in July, also repeals and replaces provisions that do not require states to recognize same-sex marriages from other states with provisions that prohibit the denial of full faith and credit or any claim or right or claim relating to out-of-state marriages on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, national origin, allows the Department of Justice to bring a civil action and establishes a private right of action for violations. Now, while the Democrat advocates are saying that this is promoting equality, we're not targeting religious leaders, what happens if you disagree? What happens if you decide you don't want to participate with them forcing you to celebrate something you disagree with? That's not liberty. Remember, when it comes to our rights, get back to the Declaration of Independence, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You have the right to pursue happiness, not to be happy. You don't have a right to education, you have a right to pursue it. You don't have a right to health care, you have a right to pursue it. You don't have a right to housing, you have a right to pursue it. Government's not supposed to put up laws blocking it or interfering. You're supposed to have the opportunity to pursue those things. That's how your rights work. And our rights stop at the next person's rights. So if I want to swing my arms, but you have a right not to be punched in the face, then I have to be responsible for my right. And if my right collides with your right not to be punched in the face, now we got a problem. Then government get involved. Otherwise, none of their business. So what's going on here? It's like the cake baking thing. Same thing, right? Well, gosh, that baker is not, doesn't want to bake that cake. Oh, well, we're going to sue you to force you to. I don't go to a mattress store and demand to buy socks. We don't carry that product. Oh, well, I'm going to sue you then. Christian baker says, hey, homosexual cake, we don't carry that product. Go ahead and find a baker that does. That's how our rights are supposed to work. You have the opportunity to pursue. Find someone who does. But you can't force somebody to agree with you and do what you say because government said so. You got to bake my cake. That's not how it works. And this Respect for Marriage Act is the same garbage. But see, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because there is an attempt to give religious institutions a problem, to shut them down, to end them. So, Doug, you're going a little extreme now. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I was writing about this stuff on my blog, and I had a homosexual commenter, a guy named Tom, used to always tell me, oh, come on, Doug, that's not going to happen. But now it is. It's starting to. At what point do we get like the character in The Obsolete Man in the Twilight Zone where he has to get his Bible out of his safe? Because that's the only safe place for it. Otherwise, it might get discovered. Finally, a final headline that's tied to what we're talking about. Persecution of Christians intense in up to 60 countries around the globe. In other words, this isn't just going on in America. Matter of fact, it's worse around the world. Christians in America really don't know what persecution is compared to, the rest of the world. There are estimated to be more than 360 million Christians facing persecution for their faith around the world today, according to Open Doors USA, an organization that advocates on behalf of the persecuted church. There are about 50 to 60 countries where there is intense levels of persecution. We live in America. America was founded on the Pilgrims and others seeking religious freedom. Yet here we are with this garbage going on. Why are we in this problem? Because we, those who believe in God, those who are of faith, have not been fighting the good fight. Churches have been infiltrated. Churches have been giving in. Churches have watered down the word. We can't get our political house in order if we don't get our religious house in order. We better get right with God. We don't need to talk less about God. Well, Doug, separation of church and state. And where in the Constitution does it say that? It doesn't. In fact, there was a guy on TikTok not too long ago. I've got a screenshot of this. I'll do a video about it later. He's talking about the Danbury Baptists. He generally got it right. He had a couple of details wrong. This separation of church and state, that's not in the Constitution. First Amendment doesn't say that. First Amendment says that the federal government can't establish a church. And the Danbury Baptists wrote Jefferson and said, hey, we know you were part of bringing religious liberty to Virginia. How can you help us now that you're president? It's like in 1801 when they wrote him. He says, I can't. There's got to be a wall of separation between church and state. That's where the term comes from. What he meant by that was religion is not a federal issue. We're not allowed to monkey with it. That's between you and your state. And religious freedom means that government's not supposed to meddle in religious freedom. Your religious freedom comes first. It's none of government's business. Fight for your religious freedom in that state. Get them to turn it around, though, because federal government can't get involved. Because it's not in our authority. Yet we have federal government doing everything it can to snuff out religious faith. Christian faith specifically. And it's gotten so bad that a constitutionalist like me, in front of a crowd of maybe 40 ladies, gave a speech that didn't promote Christianity, didn't even mention Christianity, talked about how God is the author of our rights and the giver of our rights and gave us our rights, natural rights, laws of nature and of nature's God, says so in the Declaration of Independence. And it says so in the preamble of the Constitution, secure the blessings of liberty. And that God is the foundation, God is the keystone. The founders believed that, and they came here because of religious persecution, seeking religious freedom. And now we're going to freak out because I'm telling that story? Because I'm relaying a piece of history that they believed? And we should too. Didn't have that in my speech, but I'm going to tell you that God is the foundation. Is this a Christian country? We're not a theocracy. We're not a Christian country like a Muslim country is a Muslim country. But we are a Christian country in the sense that Christianity is that foundation. The moral value system. And so, well, Doug, don't you think that's kind of mean to this group and that group? Those groups weren't the founding fathers. Founding this country is based on Christianity. Doesn't mean you have to be a Christian. Doesn't mean you have to be a Christian to vote. Doesn't mean that you have to be a Christian or else you can't live here. It's not a theocracy. But you know what? Because of those Christian values, because of that Christian foundation, people who are not Christian live here with more liberty and more safety than anywhere else in the world. So even if you're not a Christian, you should be embracing that because that's what gives you the freedoms to disagree. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. United we stand. Combined we kick butt. God bless America. My friends, God bless you. Remember, we're always trying to fund stuff. In fact, my KMET radio show, the new contract that's coming up in January, and we haven't raised any money for it yet. We'd like to open up a physical location with a conference and a room and classrooms and all of that. Still working towards that. We've got a lot of things we need to fund. We need your help as always. DouglasVGibbs.com, PoliticalPistachio.com. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends about this page and the other pages. This video is on more than just one video location, by the way. Want to join my email list? No problem. Go to PoliticalPistachio.com, right-hand sidebar, scroll down until it says join the email list. It's a maroon-colored button. Click that, fill it out, you're on. I send out reminders about the classes with the handouts, links to the PDF of the handouts. I send out links whenever I do videos, write articles, when I'm going to be speaking somewhere so that you can be there. And if you want to bring me out, speak to your group, shoot me an email, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com. Stay constitutional. We'll see you next time. God bless and Merry Christmas.